the you turn that down so I can't hear myself. Um, the images I'm going to be using today, I sent to Donna and she uploaded them to the site. So if you want to play around with any of the images, they're all in one of two groups. Either they're my personal images that I took with my camera, or they're unrestricted on a public domain license. And before I get started, I want to show you one website that I found that if you want photos just to practice with, they're not really stock photos that you might use in presentations and things like that, but this is wesaturate.com, all one word, resaturate.com. There's no fee for that. You don't even have to join to get the photos. You go there and you go, well, that looks like a good one. I'll download. And you see some of them, they have RAW and they have JPEG. So you choose which one you want.
Okay. Sorry, share your screen. Please go back there. Yeah. To minimize that thing, and no, we don't need that. Who's that? Okay, click. Oh, yeah, there you go. That share, and then.
All right.
That's it.
Looks like we're good. Yeah.
Okay, you can right now. I'm seeing you out of the webcam as well. If you want to.
Yeah, we don't want
close
that. We don't want that foolishness. Let's just stop that guy.
Okay, cool. And then just minimize everything. You can probably just minimize that, and then all of that. Yeah, go back.
Okay. So how does that look?
Still has the webcam.
Well, the webcam is not on.
Oh, that little screen.
Perhaps, yeah. All right, let me just turn this off. How about that?
Sure.
Hide. Okay.
And then minimize the other. Perfect.
Now we good? Okay.
Very good.
You know, actually, we did go through all that about an hour ago, and it was working just fine. But anyway, okay. So this is where I got a lot of the images I'm using today, and that are on the Adobe User Group website. So these are all public domain images. They have Creative Cloud licensing, but it's CC0, which is the public domain version of not Creative Cloud, Creative Commons. Creative Commons licensing, that's CC0, which means you can do it. You can even use them for commercial purposes, unlimited use. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about what is Lightroom. I'm going to switch to my other Lightroom. There you go. Its purpose, really, it has so many purposes that whatever you use it for, that's probably its purpose to you. One of its purposes is to catalog your photos, and you can identify them with keywords. You can put little flags on them. You can add all this metadata to them to help you find them later, to help you search for a particular image of a certain scene, or whatever you use that cataloging feature for. I don't happen to use that feature, so that's not one that really matters to me. What I use it for is image touch-ups, and sometimes the entire processing of my digital images. And I've found it quite friendly in that regard. So that's a lot of what we're going to be doing today. You can share the things that we're going to be using, the presets, which is one of the major portions of the presentation. You can share presets with other people. You can download other people's presets. You can purchase presets that people have created for sale. You can sell your own, but that's such a saturated market that I don't know really how much money you're going to make doing that. So I want to describe first some of the modules, actually all the modules that, and you see I have mine set so that those hide when I move the mouse away from it. So I move the mouse up to that little triangle at the top, and you see there's 7 modules shown there. And you see we're under the library module. So you get a view of the thumbnails of your photos in particular folders that are on your hard drive, and you can work with collections, and we're going to talk about collections here in a bit. But that's the library module. The other one is the develop module, which we're going to be using mostly today. So I'll not really describe that in detail right now. The map, if you are curious where your photos were taken, you maybe you want some photos that were taken in Hawaii. Well, you can come here and you can find them that way. A lot of mine were taken with my DSLR, which doesn't have GPS in it. So about the only ones of mine that are going to be on this map are the ones I took with my iPhone. But that's what the map thing is for. Well, I'm not going to click on that, but that is a way that you can make one of these hardback photo books out of it, and there's vendors you can select for that and rearrange your photos however you want them. But if I click on that, it's going to take some time to arrange the photos in that particular the folder that I've already selected, and try to put it in a book for me. Slideshow is if you want to create a slideshow generally for a website or maybe for a presentation, but there's many options over here. You can make title for it. You can have different themes if you want the thumbnails there, you want the full-size photos or whatever. And after you do that, it might come out looking something like this, where someone sees 9 thumbnails, they click next, they see more. If they want zoom in, they can click on a shot and see it. So that's the kind of slideshow you get by creating that in Lightroom. And what that does, it puts them in, gives you some HTML pages, all the control for that, the content or the little thumbnails, everything. It packages it into one folder, and you can upload it wherever you want to put it for your website, or if you want to package it and send it to someone, you can do that. Print is exactly what it's intended for, and then web, same thing if you want to put something on the web. But like I said, we'll be mostly using the develop module. There's several different views here. This is what's called the grid view, and down in the lower left, you see where I'm pointing there. There's 3 different views shown there, 4 views shown there. The next one is loop view, and you see the shortcut for that. It's E, just the E key, not Control E or anything, just the E. And that just gives you a zoomed in view of the particular photo that was selected when you press E. This one you can compare. If you want to look at 2 shots and see what's different between the 2, you put one on the left, one on the right, and you can do that. There's a similar view that we'll see when we get to develop module, which is reference view. If you've got a reference photo and you've got a photo you're developing and you want the colors and the cropping and everything to sort of match, then you can put a reference photo and develop the other one as you're looking at the reference photo. But we'll see that next. Survey view, just I really haven't found very useful, so quite honestly, I don't know what that's for. Just to be real honest, but people view can be useful, but I found that it can also take a lot of time too. You see, I've got 114,000 photos cataloged here on this drive and 3 external drives and so on that I didn't bring with me, but I've got that many photos. In fact, if I start cataloging the faces on all those, it's going to take a tremendous amount of time. But Lightroom does a fairly decent job of it, and the ones that it guesses at, sometimes it'll guess correctly and sometimes not, but you can correct that. But that's what that face view is for. And these are just to advance to the next image or the previous image and so on. And you can hide that if you want. You can just delete that. You can choose other, like if I want flagging to be shown there, I might want to flag that one as a pick, and then maybe I'll unflag it as a pick. So whatever you want there, that's up to you. You can sort them however you want. alphabetically or by date taken or whatever. Uh, okay. So we want to be in the grid view, and I'll use the shortcut key G for that. I'm a shortcut guy, so um, I like shortcuts, and the ones in Lightroom that I use are fairly simple. I mentioned the other one is E. The develop one you could probably figure out is D to get there, or you could click develop up here, and it will open the develop module in whatever photo you have selected already. Um, if I double click a photo, it's going to go to the loop view, which is the E for the zoomed in version. Uh, presets. We're talking about presets. Let's take this one to the develop module, and we'll go there. Now, uh, some of you are familiar with Photoshop, maybe all of you are, I don't know, but Photoshop has something called actions that you can use, and uh, presets in Lightroom are not exactly the same as actions. Actually, there's probably more differences than there are similarities, but what's similar about them is that both actions and presets serve the purpose of doing a lot of things with one command or one click. And so they're similar in that regard. An action is more like a macro that you might write, or you might use somebody else's macro in Word or InDesign or some other product like that. Actions are, but presets are not actions at all. They're just collections of all the settings. Like if I adjust exposure, highlights, whites, clarity, and all those settings here, and I say make a preset out of that, it is just a collection of all those settings, and I can reapply that to another photo or to a group of photos actually. So being a shortcut guy, using keyboard shortcuts a lot, I like to use presets. Another thing that presets allow you to do is, this one is a landscape, and we're going to be working with this photograph first. If I have other shots that I took at a similar time and location, they're likely going to have similar lighting, similar subject matter, similar background and contrast, and degree of fogginess of the background, and all those things are going to be similar. And so probably the settings for developing the photo, processing it, are going to be real similar. And so you can make a preset that would apply to all those photos. And presets are almost never going to be something that you apply and then you leave it. Sometimes it will be, but it's really just a starting place. You apply the preset and then you go, okay, well, let me tweak this just a little bit, maybe come down on the exposure a little bit, but at least it'll get you close. There's several different types of presets. We'll talk about a few of them later on, but for this main section of the presentation, we're talking mainly about the developed presets that you see over here. And you may or may not have noticed, but when we're in other views, those aren't present in view. It shows my view of folders over here on the left when I'm in grid view. If I go to loop view, it's the same thing. I have to be in develop module in order for the develop presets to show, because that's their whole purpose in being, is for developing the photo. If you're like me, you buy books and you don't read them. I got so many books I bought because, well, yeah, this one looks like a really good one, so it sits on my bookshelf for years, and I might get around to it eventually. Yeah, but presets are the same way. You might go to somebody's website and they'll have some presets to download. You go, oh, this is pretty good, so you install them into Lightroom and never use them, or you might buy some and you never get your money's worth out of them because you never use them. I have some that are that for me, but anyway, they're a lot like books in that regard. But of the 5 photos in this landscape uh, folder, you see of my Adobe user group folder today, I've got some fireworks, landscapes, portraits, sunsets, and underwater shots. But out of the ones in the landscape folder, there's 5 of them, and 3 of them are pretty similar. You see those 3 that are shown on the left? Those are pretty similar in subject matter and lighting and contrast and all of those things. So I think one preset is going to work for all 3 of those. Now, if I try to apply the same development settings to that photo, the hibiscus, and the one of that little sort of mini waterfall there, I don't think it's going to work out so well. But let's try it and see what happens. So we're just going to process this first one, and since that's such a small screen, I'm going to move that out of the way a little bit so we can see that better. Um, and the easiest way to do that is just start fiddling with things. If you've never used Lightroom before, you know what exposure does. I can click on, I can look at that and I see it is a little bit bright, so I'm going to crank the exposure down just a little bit. And so the highlights I'm going to crank down a little bit more, because if I decrease the exposure even more than I already have, a half a stop, all of that rock and these things in the foreground and the shadows, they're going to be too dark, and I don't want that. So I'm going to come back on the highlights a little bit. Now you go, well, it's still a little bright. Why don't you come back all the way? Well, I'll show you why. We zoom in, and I'm going to even zoom in some more. So 2 to 1, and for one thing, you can see already there's a little bit, that's called chromatic aberration. You see on the left of that tree, not stalk, whatever it's called, tree trunk. A little red on the left, a little blue on the right. But actually, I moved the wrong thing. That was -50. There we go. So if I bring the highlights down, all the way down, you can see that that's exaggerated even more by reducing the highlights more than you really need to. Shadows increasing is somewhat the opposite of decreasing the highlights. So I can increase the shadows all the way, and you see that does it too, but it also introduces a lot of noise. So the main effect of decreasing the highlights is to add chromatic aberration, and the main effect of increasing the shadows is to add noise. Neither of those things are good, but Lightroom is very good at removing the chromatic aberration, and there's a setting for that in the bottom. And in your Lightroom, if you don't see those controls, just click on the triangle to expand that particular section. So I'm on lens settings now, and I'll go remove chromatic aberration. And after a second or two, you go, wow, that did a great job. So all of that's gone. But that still doesn't mean that, oh, well, since that's gone, that reducing the highlights all the way introduced, I can leave them down to -100. Now, you'll come up with your own techniques about what works for you and what doesn't. But for the photos I work with, I don't like to go beyond -50. And for the same reason, I don't like to go above +50 on the shadows. Sometimes I do just because I want to, but in general, I don't do that. So I'm going to leave those there. Come back a little bit on the whites and up on the blacks. Add some clarity and contrast to it. Clarity ends up, if you're looking at the photo and you increase the clarity and then you back off and you increase the contrast and you back off and you go, well, those looked about the same adjustment. So how's clarity and contrast different? Because they just are. No, yeah, go ahead.
I looked it up the other day.
Yeah, what's the difference?
Color increases the contrast in the mid-range.
So there you go. So it does increase the contrast, but specific amount of. Actually, you do. You get to put a ticket in the. But yeah, okay. Thanks for adding that clarification there. All right. Actually, the white balance looks pretty good, so I'm not going to mess with the temperatures there. That eyedropper really works pretty well a lot of the time, but I'm not going to use it today. And here's one thing you can do with the sky. I see a lot of photos that the sky just looks really unusually dark and distorted, so I'm not going to do that. But I'm going to increase the blue saturation a little bit, come down the luminance a little bit to make that sky stand out more. And when I make those two corrections, I found the hue just looks a little off, so I'm going to come up on the hue a little bit. So now it looks back to somewhat normal. So if I go, I'm going to press the backslash key. That's the shortcut for original. So, well, Oh, it is, but see my keyboard, I was telling Don earlier that sometimes when I press a key on my keyboard, nothing happens. So I use an external keyboard at home. So that's before and that's after. So there's a big change right there. Go before and after, it's the backslash. No, I press and release. All right, so that looks pretty good. And one way I can apply those settings to a different photo, a similar photo, is if I just go copy. I can click copy, and it gives you the options of what to copy. So basically, all of those things are good. I didn't do any local adjustments. That's your different graduated and radial filters and your brush. We're gonna use a brush here in a little bit, but not on this photo yet. Uh, we didn't apply lens corrections, but I'm gonna just leave it checked. We didn't do transformations or cropping, uh, spot removal, none of that I did. So, okay, that's good. That's what I want to copy. And let's go over to this photo and see how that works when I use those settings. This takes a second or two, and that looks pretty good. I might want to come up on the exposure for that one because we came down the other one. That I think is too dark. So if I come up a little bit, here, I'm done. I would crop that a little bit. That is not cropped to my liking, but I'm not working with cropping right now, so we're not going to do that. And you notice when we copied those settings, crop was an option. I don't I don't see a situation where I would apply the same crop because if you crop it and then you move it, uh, I'll show you what I'm talking about. R is the shortcut for crop, by the way. So first thing I would do would be rotate it just a hair. I don't want those totally vertical, but that's pretty good. All right, that's good. I'll hit enter and apply that. Now let me go back to my crop module. Maybe I want to crop a little more because those trees at the bottom, I want those out of there. So I'm cutting up a little bit. All right, that's good. And I'm moving this over just a little bit and up, and I want that tree trunk out. All right, perfect. Now, all of that movement of the image I did within that crop window, it's not probably the same as I would want to crop this one and move that around. So that's why I would say I don't envision a situation where I would ever use crop as a copy and paste setting. Um, but what I'm going to do is reset that image back to what it was, and I just clicked reset there on the lower right to do that. And so now we're back to the original settings. These are all raw photos, by the way. And out of all the photos I'm using today, they're all raws except for two, and those weren't even the ones I sent to Donna anyway. Yeah, thanks. A raw photo. There's actually, if you look at your files, it'll say .jpg or .tif or .png or something like that. Some of them actually have the extension RAW. Mine doesn't. Mine says CR2 out of my Canon. Nikon, I think, is DNG. But there's different extensions for raw photos. But the letters RAW, it's not an acronym. It just means it's exactly what the camera sensor sees. All the light, all the little details, everything the camera sensor sees is what's in that photo. Isn't it what? It's uncompressed. They're huge. You look at a JPEG, and a particular JPEG might be 500K. It'd be 500, yeah, 500K. It'd be a fairly large JPEG. Well, okay, yeah, right. 22, yeah, 22 megapixels. You're talking a large JPEG, but the same raw photo for that 22 megapixel photo is going to be like 10 meg. So they're a lot larger, but with hard drive sizes the way they are, who cares? So I generally set my camera to shoot in RAW and JPEG, and that way I can transfer the JPEGs to my iPhone because the film card I use, the memory card I use, has Wi-Fi in it, so it transfers to my iPhone automatically as I take the photos, and so I can look at the JPEGs on my iPhone and process the RAWs when I get home. So the reason you want to process in RAW is because there's more range available. you're able to increase and decrease settings a lot more than you would if it's a JPEG, because to get the compression on a JPEG, it removes a lot of that stuff. And you know, dynamic range was the word I was looking for. Dynamic range is the difference between the lowest and the highest of whatever it is you're talking about, whether it's light levels or color levels or whatever. You've got a higher dynamic range in a RAW than a JPEG. So we want to create a preset out of this, and first thing I'm going to do to do that is look at my notes and make sure I'm caught up so far. Yeah, we're good. There. So to save the preset, because not only, I mean, copy and paste is that I just did, that's going to do the same thing as a preset would, but I'm going to have other landscape photos I take next month. And I don't want to have to go back to this photo, copy the settings from this photo, and apply it to those photos next month. If I have a saved preset, I can just click on the preset, and it's there forever until I delete it. So I'm going to click on plus, and you see there's a whole lot of options here. The same things you can save that are available on the copy, except one thing that's not here is the crop settings. The crop settings were available on copy, they're not here. But other things are, except for brush. Graduated radial filter brush is not there. Transform, I'm leaving them unchecked. So I'm going to call this preset one landscape. If I could, well, DSCP. Because I said some of my keys don't type, so that's why I'm not typing the whole thing. If I was at home on my other keyboard, I would do that. And I want to put them in a new folder called AAUG. Just because I like those initials. No other reason than that. So if I click OK, you see there it is. Now, that number, the reason I put the number 1 on it is for a couple of reasons. One, I can put them in whatever order I want that way. And if I want to reorder them later, I can change the name of that. Click, rename and put a different number in front of it. But they're going to be ordered according to alphabetic. But the other thing is, other presets, like the ones that are, these are all built in. If it says Lightroom in front of it, those are built into Lightroom. None of them start with a 1. So I can look at this, if I'm just looking at a list of my presets, I can look at that number 1 and say, well, that's either mine or this Matt guy. He numbers his sometimes. And let me mention too, Matt's Creative Live. This is the last day of Photo Week on Creative Live, creativelive.com. That's one of the best video sites you can go to. There's some really good ones out there. I can't think of the name of one of the main ones. What's the main one with the lady's name?
Linda.
Yeah, Linda. That's probably one of the best. Creative Live, if you're using Adobe products, that's I think the best. That's my opinion. Anyway, this Matt guy does a lot of presentations there, and if you happen to get on the schedule, not presenting, but if you're watching the schedule during Photo Week, it's all free if you watch it real time. But they save them, and if you want to watch them later, you can pay for it. And like a course might be, a 1-hour course might be $19. Or if it's 2 or 3 hours, you might pay $29 for it. So, I don't get any money for saying that, but I'm saying I got a lot of use out of Creative Live courses, and so I want to pass that along to you. The other things you can do with the preset that you've saved, if I right click on that, or if you're on a Mac, you control click, and I can update with current settings. So if I use that preset and I go, well, that's really a little bit dark, let me crank up the exposure a little bit, I can update that with current settings, and then every time I use that preset hints, it's going to apply those settings to it. Now, Lightroom remembers a lot of things, but it doesn't remember which photos I've already applied this preset to. So it's not retroactive. It's not going to go back in your library and find every one that you've applied this to and update those photos. but it will update the preset. And these presets are just text files. You can look at them with any text editor and see, well, okay, let's save this, let's save this, let's save this. Show and explore, you know, why would I need to know that? Or if you're on a Mac, it'll say show in Finder. If I click that, it's going to show me exactly on my computer's hard drive structure where that is saved. And that's important because if I want to send this to someone, or since I'm going to get rich off of this, I'm going to be uploading these to my website and make lots of money off of them when people buy them and, you know, put them on their bookshelf and not use them. So that's how you do that. You go here and you go, okay, there they are, and I can either zip it up or, you know, somehow get it to my website. The other things are you can delete it, export. What's the difference in export and import? Well, I mean, not export. That's obvious. What's the difference in what I just described when I went to show and explore, when I said that you could send it to somebody or export? There's no difference if you're just doing one. But what's going to happen if you say export, it's going to save that one preset. Wherever you want to save it, it makes a copy of it and saves it there. As opposed to if I went to my settings here, I might have a dozen of them here. I want to zip them up and just send them to my buddy. So it's just a different way to do the same thing in different ways. Yeah. So the other thing, import, is obvious. If I bought some, or if somebody sent me some, I could import them. Or if you go directly into the folder where they're located in develop presets, you can either put them in a folder or not. I mean, it's up to you. But you'd have to close Lightroom and reopen it for them to appear. But they would appear. You wouldn't have to do anything else special to get them there. Just do it. The other thing you can do here is if I say, well, this one really ought to be down here, you can just move it by dragging it, but I don't think it's going to let me drag it to any of the Lightroom ones. It would let me drag it to user presets, so let me try that. User presets, right here, right above beach. There we go. But I like it in the user group folder, so let's put it back. There we go. All right, so now we want to use that on the other two photos I said it might work on. So I'm going to select those. I click one, I hold the control key down, or command if you're on the Mac, and click the other one. So I got two selected, and if it's in doubt how many you've got selected, it says right there by my mouse with a little kaleidoscope thing, 2 selected. So I'm going to click that, and I can see on my navigator window, when I hover the mouse over it, even without clicking it, I can see the effect of that preset on that one photo. It can't show more than one, but if I click that, it's going to apply that. Did it apply to the other one? I can't tell that it did. Maybe it's just taking a while. No, it didn't apply to that one. Well, let's apply it to that one.
What did you apply?
The preset. I clicked on that preset. But here's something you might have noticed as I hovered over it in the thumbnail in the navigator window. As I hover over a preset, in that one you can see the effect of the different presets. So you go, well, that one worked, but not really as well as I'd like. So you can see what some of these other, some of those are just cruddy. An underwater camera is not good at all for that one. You'll see what it does later on, but none of them for that. All right, and that's just by hovering over. If you move the mouse out of the way, then nothing has changed. And one question would be, well, what happens if I apply one of these other settings? Beach. Okay, did those settings override the settings I've already applied? Anybody have a guess? What do you think is going to happen?
Yes or no?
Yeah, exactly right. Well, and those are reasonable guesses because I mean, Lightroom they could have developed Lightroom such that it would override the previous settings, or they could have developed it so that it would just add to it. And what happens is, let's see exposure. It's down 1/2 a stop. Well, if the beach preset has an exposure setting, that one will take the place of this one. If it's minus 0.2, then that's what this is going to be, minus 0.2. If it's plus 2, then this is going to be plus 2. They don't add, it just simply replaces it. But if there's not a setting for exposure in that preset, then exposure is going to be unchanged. So it will change the ones that there are settings for, but if there's not a setting for something, it's not going to mess with it. So only click that, and you see exposure did go back to 0 because the setting for beach, the exposure setting for that was 0. And so there you go.
It either overrides or does nothing.
Correct. Yeah, it doesn't add to it.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not cumulative, in other words. And that's a good thing to wonder. Well, what if I click on now cloudy day? Are the settings going to add to this one? No. No. And there's another thing later on when we get to brushes. You'll see the brush is not cumulative either. Whereas if you've ever used some of the brushes, well, brush, it's one of the tools in Photoshop is called brush. If you use brush and you go over something and maybe you've only got 80% flow, well, if you go over it twice, it's going to be more than 80% flow. Those are cumulative in Photoshop, but in Lightroom, the brush is not cumulative. All right, so I'm going to go Control Z, undo cloudy day, undo beach, and now I'm back to just where I was. Now, I said at first that I didn't think that preset was going to work very well for this photo or the other one. Oh, just a second. I don't know if you noticed that. Did you notice when the photo first came up, it looked a little more drab than it does now? Did you notice it changed? I don't know if you noticed that, but it did. And I didn't do anything to it. So let me go out of that image and then come back to it. So, all right, so when I click on that, let's see if it happens again or if it remembers what it did. No. Yeah, it's similar. Because Lightroom applies some settings that it thinks are the right ones, even without you doing it. And there's a way around that, but it's beyond this today. So, I mean, if you want to know how to do it, we can figure it out together later. But that's because Lightroom's doing it, and your camera does the same thing. If you take a shot and you look at the glass on the back, it has already applied some settings to that, what you see, and so that's another reason for using RAW, because those settings are not applied, and you get to apply your own settings to that. But let's apply that preset here. And no, that's too saturated and just doesn't look right. So we could develop that and do some nice things with it. Let me show you though, before we go on, one other thing that's different about Photoshop and Lightroom. If I say they both have a spot removal, it's called healing brush in Photoshop, but the healing brush in Photoshop, when you click on it and you brush over something, it just takes the surrounding pixels and tries to match them up the best it can, so you can't tell the blemish was there that you took out. But look what this one does, and you can adjust the brush size. You see the size of the brush is the circle, and the square bracket, open bracket is a decrease, and the greater bracket, closed bracket is increase. And you change the feather and the opacity, and you can change those settings, but I'm going to just leave them at what they are. So get that brush size down a little bit and brush that. And watch what it does. See this arrow, if I go back to fit, you see it took this spot here, and it says, well, that's pretty close to what that one needs to be. So that's what it did. It doesn't. Yes, yeah. So the brush, yeah, the healing brush in Photoshop, I mean in Lightroom, is more like a stamp. And you see, it didn't do a perfect job. It didn't do bad, but it didn't do a perfect job. Let me do that other one there and see how that one looks. Yeah, that one's better. Let me show you one other thing too. You know, if you've done that a lot in Photoshop, you know you gotta watch out when you get close to an edge because it's gonna bring in the stuff you don't want. But this brush here is not really that wet. See, it brought some more of the same edge, and that's not what I want. But let me brush over that. I mean, yeah, I can move that down a little bit, and I get that. And I see that didn't look too good, so I'll brush over that. There we go. You can play around with it a little bit, but I mean, the point that I wanted to make is that it doesn't act at all the same way as the one in Photoshop. So I'm going to just reset all those.
Like the Photoshop one is better because you can control where you take the copy.
Yeah, let's go back to that. Where's that first one I did? There we go. That's the first one I did right there. Let's do that one again. Here we go. And wow, that's crazy. It's telling me it took it from down there. No. By the way, you notice my cursor is not a hand, but the shortcut key to get a hand is the space bar, same as it is in Photoshop. If I want to move it, same thing. But I can move this reference point over to other place. If I think there's a better spot for it, I can move it. Like, oh, there's a perfect spot. Not really. Yeah. No, I didn't pick up the green. Yeah. All right. Anyway, and I can reset it or just close it.
Is the other, you know, what other dot is one and then the other?
Yeah, that's red eye.
Is the other supposed to match the first one?
Oh, when I had the thing?
Yeah.
Wow, my brush.
You know, like after you do that, there'll be a dot there, and there'll be a dot on the, yeah, that's the first dot, that's the second dot.
Yeah,
You would think that they would match.
you're right. I would think that exactly. And why, how this is able to be down in the green and it not be green up at the top, I don't have the answer for that. I don't know. You would sure think they would, wouldn't you? Yep.
It knows you're thinking of Photoshop now.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know if you noticed this thing. That's how you can turn it off and back on to check the application of it. Okay. There we go. Back on. Close and reset. So I want my image back the way it was. All right. Click fit again. So let me just repeat something, and that is to change a preset. If I look at this one, because I applied that preset to this one, and if I go, well, really I came down too much on the exposure, I want to tweak that back up a little bit, and that's better. So I can right click on that and go update the current settings, and I go update. But here's one other thing on this contextual menu that I didn't mention. Apply on import. And there's two ways to get that. One is right here, and that would apply on the next import you make. But the other way to do it is if you're on your import module. If I go import and I've got some photos on my computer that I want to import, the other thing I can do is apply during import, develop presettings. I can apply that landscape preset if I'm just importing 100 landscape photos right now. Just boom, it's all going to be applied when it imports. I can add metadata to it, add to a collection. If I have a landscape collection, I can add to them there. This one's pretty cool. Don't import suspected duplicates. And I've got that unchecked just for a specific reason. This build smart previews is something that I recommend. And what that does is, the way Lightroom works. And by saying that, I'm assuming that not everybody does. So let me, Lightroom doesn't actually make changes to the photo. Lightroom that's how I can click reset, and I can come back a year later and click reset on a photo that I've developed, and it'll still get back to the original photo. So it doesn't ever change the original photo. It's called non-destructive editing, and so what it does, it keeps a separate file in your Lightroom catalog file. It keeps a separate file that's associated with that photo, and it remembers all the settings that you have made to it, even your brush settings, the healing brush, and all this stuff you've done to it, everything. It's in that file. Now, oh, I don't know. I don't know that it's human readable though. If you open it in text editor, I don't think it's human readable. It may be. I don't know. But the thing is, see, I mentioned earlier that I've got 114,000 images, but a lot of those are on external disks. These are on my local disk, but you see I've got other external disks that I keep photos on. One of them is just called Photos. It's a 2 terabyte hard drive that is got nothing on it but photos. And it's not even half full, but I'm just saying the capacity is 2 terabytes. Well, what if I want to work on those photos while I'm on the road and I don't have that hard drive with me? Well, that's what a smart preview is for. It keeps a copy of the photo, not the full thing, but it keeps enough of the photo here that it goes, okay, you can work with this photo, and I'll change the metadata for that photo when I get back, and I'm able to update the Lightroom catalog. So that's what a smart preview is. It lets you work offline on a photo that's not there. So that's a cool thing. It, well, naturally, when you, not the internet, no, you don't have to be connected to the internet, but you have to be connected to the source of that file when you first build a smart preview. But then later, if you disconnect it, or if you're on an airplane and you don't want to pay the $50 a day for Wi-Fi, you don't have to. No, you don't need to be connected to the internet for that. All right, so I'm going to cancel out of that. That was on the import. If I go import, but that's not the only place that you're able to build a smart preview. If I look at this right under your histogram, you can see that this photo is the original and the smart preview. Let me go to a different one here. Let's try just, I don't know, this one here. All right, that one is only the original photo. But look what happens while I'm hovering the mouse over it. It says if I click on it, it's going to build a smart preview for it to allow offline editing. So if I click on that, it's going to ask me this: do you want to build a smart preview? Well, yeah, sure. That's why I clicked on it. So build smart preview. And now you see it does say original plus smart preview. This photo can continue to be edited even if it goes offline. So, yeah, smart previews are very cool.
Does smart previews if you own an iPad take up space?
On an iPad? You know what?
Big offline one?
I don't know the answer to that. It seems reasonable that it's taken up space somewhere. But I think where the space is taken up is in your Lightroom catalog, which presumably is going to be on your computer, where the same computer where Lightroom is installed. But, like I said, I don't know the answer to that, but that's my guess. Here's one that I think is the perfect application of applying a preview to, not a preview, but a developed preset to multiple photos. Those are all Airworks photos, and they all can be improved with the same set of adjustments. And so let's try. If I click all of those, and I'll go edit and see if I can do it without getting to the develop module. I told you earlier that you need to be in the develop module, but if I right click on that and go develop settings, I'll go no. Yeah, I don't see a way to do it without All right. So let's do that. Go to Develop Module. Select one of them. Select them all. I'm holding the Shift key down and selecting the last one. And by the way, the reason they all say 2 is because I've made a copy of each of these and put it in a collection for a reason I'll describe in a minute. But I don't know if you noticed, all of my others in the landscape folder all had 2s on them as well. That's what that's for. And they're stacked. So there's that little 2 in the upper left corner is telling me there's 2 photos in that stack. And I can unstack them if I want. All right, so if I click Fireworks, it should apply the Fireworks preset to all those, and my little progress thing is going. Yeah, it quit moving, so let's see. Well, I don't see that the preset was applied to that one, because none of these things have changed. That's crazy. Yeah. Well, I did too. Yeah. All right. Well, I did see one of those other things over there. Let's try this. It's been applied there, so if I click copy, and now I'm going to go back to the loop module. This loop module works a lot faster than the develop module does. So if I right click, go develop settings and go paste. In this case, paste settings from previous is going to be the same as paste settings. Paste. Loading, loading, loading. We'll see. I think it's going to work. Of course, there are 5 of them, so it did. And one thing you can tell too in the lower right, that little plus minus, that's an indication that it's not the original photo. There's been some changes made to that photo after that. All right, so I said these could all benefit from the same previous settings. Let's look and see how they look now. That one looks pretty good. If I click on it, zoom in, yeah, still looks pretty good after it finishes rendering the photo. Not bad. All right, so there's a couple of these though. The second and the third one here, that one and that one, they've got more smoke than the rest. So what I want to do is, see, I've got another setting. You might have seen fireworks over there. And so I'm going to reset both of those and go to smoky fireworks. And those are my presets, but there were ones that I saved from developing fireworks, and I thought, well, that worked pretty well.
I don't see the smoke.
Yeah, because I clicked smoky fireworks and it's gone.
You mean the smoky fireworks was to get rid of the smoke?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wanted to apply that preset to smoky fireworks, which is why I named it that. But
Okay.
yeah, if it would have been yours, you might have named it unsmoky fireworks.
Which would have been better.
Which okay. Yeah, but the name is good if it works for you. So all right. So those work well. So we in just one little second we're going to go to break, but let me just show one more thing here. Back to grid module, and let's go portrait. I see a lot of portraits here that can benefit from the same settings. These two are similar, and 2 and 3 are similar. See, number 1 and number 4 are similar in that the face is somewhat shadowed. And in 2 and 3, there's almost no shadows on the face, or certainly fewer shadows on the face. So I'm going to select all of these. Well, after I process one of them, I'm going to select all of them that don't have the shadows on the face. So let's just do a real quick Uh, that one, I think she's a little bit yellow, so I'm going to just down the yellow a little bit. Just a couple of clicks on the temperature, and that's good. Maybe one click of tint toward the pink. Uh, Exposure looks good. I'm going to come back on the highlights just a little bit. And you see that even when I did that, I put more color in her face. Shadows are negligible. Let me show one thing too. That triangle there and this triangle there to show clipping. So if I click on that and I increase or decrease the shadows, you see the blue in her hair. I've decreased the shadows so much it says, well, yeah, it's like distortion in a audio recording. So that's distortion in your visual recording there. So I need to come back up on the shadows until that blue goes away. And that's really as low as I normally should go, but still, that's just a suggestion. If I want to go lower than that and decrease the shadows more, I can. Certainly, I mean, it's if it's your photo you're developing, you process it the way you want it to look. And it's okay to have both of these triangles clicked in the same photo. I mean, you don't have to deselect one and select the other one. All right, so now, how about highlights? If I increase the highlights more, then now you see where that one is over highlighted. Or if you've got distortion in the highlights there where it's red, there's some red there, but a lot of it here in the sky. And some right on our face. So
are those marks, those red marks, showing where the effect will be?
yeah, if I were to export this as a JPEG, that would not be there. It's only right now in Lightroom. And I can turn that off. If I click that, you won't see it. It's only when that is turned on, but it's good to have that because it shows you how far you can come without distortion. So that's not distorted right now. It's still higher than I want it to be. I want to come down even to like -20. Is where I want it to be. And I want the shadows up a little bit more, but not a lot. Because if I increase the shadows where I can see in her hair, then this part of her hair isn't as nicely defined. So let me increase that a little bit. But no, I don't like that. I'm going to just leave it at 0 for the shadows. Now, we talked about clarity earlier. If you increase clarity on a portrait, it just really, I think, distorts the face way too much. So I almost never increase clarity on a portrait. Or not necessarily. It does, yeah. And it just really, and in fact, some of these, if you look at a preset that says portrait, you're going to see the clarity is backed off a little bit, maybe -10 or -15. Yeah, because it provides a little softer view. It makes the face look nicer for that. Vibrance, I'm going to add that a little more. Just pop those pink lips right out of there. Okay, so that's good. I might add some sharpening and whatever, but I like that. So you know how to save a preset. So let me just do that real quickly. I want it not in the folder user presets. By the way, when you first install Lightroom, you don't have a folder user presets, but the first one you save, it will create the folder for you. So I want that to go into AAUG and number 2, portrait. PORT, since my keys don't work. Create. All right.
The number that you, does the number help you order with the file?
Yeah, it's going to put them in order by default. But like I mentioned earlier, you can change that if you want. So, no. Okay. I could move this down to a different folder if I wanted, but I can't change the order. The order is going to be alphabetic. So let's see if my theory about the same settings would still look good on this one. See if that holds true. Click that one. Yeah, it looks okay. I think his face maybe has too much highlight, so I might come back a little bit more. But like I said at the beginning, it's a starting point, and you get close and you go from there. The preset gets you close. Oh, and you see we got some clipping there on the highlights. Now that one, I don't think it worked well on that one. So there's before. If I can get my key to work. There we go. There's before. And I'm going to turn that clipping off. Show. After. Yeah. No. I'm going to reset that guy. Okay. So it didn't work on that one. We use different settings on. Actually, I'm not going to, but if I was developing him, I would. Okay. So is that one any better? Before. After. Before. Well, her skin's warmer for one thing. I like the result of that. So this one, okay, yeah, just subtle changes, but I think it's an improvement. And those are all from the wesaturate.com website that I mentioned earlier. And so I suggested they would not work on these. Let's see how well it does. It might still provide a good starting point, but we had no shadow adjustment, and I'm going to need some shadow adjustment here so I can see her lovely face. There we go. Up to 60. I said no, 50 is my limit. Okay, and this one, let's see how this one works. I think this one will work with a little bit of, yeah, what made that grass just pop out. Yeah, here's before. Yeah, subtle changes, but it worked. And I'm not going to take the time to do it, but sunsets, I've got several sunsets here, and sunsets either tend to be all blue, like this is mostly blue with a little bit of orange, that one's the same thing, or orange and red. So I think the same preset would work on number 2 and number 7, but not on 5 and 6 and these blue ones. So I would need 2 different presets for those. But the neat thing is, we could look at the navigator view. If I go to develop module, and remember you can just hover over that thing. Where is it? There it is. I'll go to my user presets. Here we go. Beach, basic. No, I don't like that one. Beach doesn't look bad, but still wouldn't be what I would end up with. If fireworks, I don't think any of the rest of these are going to work very well. So out of those presets, the best one was beach. So you see what the underwater camera did to that one and the others? Let's look at that folder. I got 2 shots there that are the only 2 JPEGs that I've got in this. And you got one with some fishies and one with a turtle, but this underwater one, here we go back to the develop module. The underwater preset is going to work nicely on both of those. Filter collections. Here we go. Underwater camera. So we got that one, and this turtle. No, this was just this was not my DSLR. This was a point and shoot, a little Canon D100 or whatever it is. But it's a nice camera. It's just not DSLR. But it was just on the basic. It was on the automatic white balance is what it was. I could have probably set a white balance before I went snorkeling and tried it, but no, I didn't because I knew I could do this. And, no. That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. All right. So if we take a break, we're going to come back and talk about backing up your presets, and I'll show you how to use them on the iPad. You'll see the iPad on the screen there, and on Lightroom on the web, whatever that's called. Here, this thing. this library. You go to lightroom.adobe.com and you see all my files are synced. Let's do it. Um, the one thing I said I was going to talk about back on the presets, but we really already did that. But the one thing I wanted to mention, and I was talking to you about the photo planner. Whether you're in the photo planner, you have the full Creative Cloud. The license allows you to install it on two computers. So it could be a work computer and a home computer, a laptop and a desktop. In my situation, I've got a Mac and a PC, so I've got the Creative Cloud installed on both. So if I want to use a Mac, I can use Mac. If I want to use PC, I can use PC. Of course, the downside of using two computers is if you're using Lightroom, it's going to be one Lightroom catalog here, one Lightroom catalog here. They don't connect. So you have to periodically back up and transfer and copy it back and forth. So
Okay, you can't do that through your library, Creative Cloud libraries with the catalog?
well,
Or is that
you can, but it's based on photos at particular locations, and your locations are going to be different. And in my case, with the external hard drive, I could remove it from one and plug it in the other. But
yeah, you can only have two photos on the external drive.
yeah,
A server.
right. But anyway, I want to mention the two computer plan. It's not just limited to one, so that's good. And actually, the license probably says it's for an individual. I mean, I haven't read it that detailed, but I don't think it means you and a buddy can share the cost. And you use a computer and he or she use a computer. I don't think Adobe's going to know if you do that, but I don't think that is really in the terms of the license. Whether it is or not is for you to find out, because I'm not going to use it that way. But here's one thing I said I would come back to, and that's adjustment brush. And I want to do it on this one because the mountain, well, that's the Lanai, different Hawaiian island there. Where this is on Maui, and you see across the ocean there, the island of Lanai, another Hawaiian island. And I want that to be a little clearer. And even the ocean water itself is, a little bit hazy. And so we can dehaze that a little bit, but you look down here at the dehaze thing. Just a minute. Do I have? Yeah, just making sure I had chromatic aberration still turned on. Because these settings are exactly what we applied to it earlier still. Yeah, so there is this dehaze, but if I dehaze, let me just crank it up a good bit. Wow, that it looked like it increased contrast a bit, but it did a few other things too. But it did it to everything, and really, I'd just assume not. I'd rather leave the mountain like it is, and see the foreground in the sky looking nice, than to have it look that way. So let's apply the same correction, but do it selectively, and we can do that with the adjustment brush. And you see, you have many of the same controls here, and I've turned on adjustment brush. So what you're seeing here, those are the adjustment brush controls. Exposure, shadows, and so on, all of those things. And since I am doing it to the, yeah, but I accidentally clicked on it to move it, not remembering that I had already clicked on adjustment brush. So I got to press the space bar to get the hand and move it down. There we go. I want to see the island in the background when I apply this. And so now what I can do is just of it so I can see what my adjustments do. See, if I crank my highlights down, you see it adjusted that. Now I crank them up and adjusted that. But I don't really need to do anything with highlights. I think the shadows maybe can come up a little bit. That's a good way to look at it. It's not really a mask, but right, it only applies to whatever I just now painted on.
Oh.
Oh,
You know, the option.
right. That'll show where I painted. Yeah, yeah. And so when I uncheck that, yeah, thanks for pointing that out. But I made a couple of adjustments here. You see shadows I made and clarity. Did you find it? It's only going to be there if no development. Yeah, but you have to select the adjustment brush. Once you click on adjustment brush, it'll be down there, right there. Yeah. And that's the same as, I mean, if you're doing this in Photoshop, I think is the backslash key is what shows that. Sort of the same thing. So I want to.
Backslash key will show it.
It'll do the same as this. It'll show it in red, and you can see.
Oh.
Yeah. On Photoshop, yeah.
Backslash key in Photoshop.
Maybe, or just hide the background.
Well, it may depend. Yeah, it's a dependent key. Where, yeah, contextual key. All right, so I'm increasing the dehaze factor, and I'm going to just go with that, and we'll see how that looks. And so you see what I did there when I just brushed that on there. The only reason I did that is so I can see the effect of my controls. And so now this is what I mentioned earlier about if I were doing this in Photoshop and I painted over it again, it would add to what I had already painted there.
Yeah.
Lightroom does not. So I can just go and do it, and now the maximum is going to be 100%. And I think the same effect I can apply that to the water, and it's going to look nice down there too. So let me do that, and you see it's kind of popping that out.
Where do you get that cursor? The new cursor with the plus sign?
That's the adjustment brush cursor.
Oh, okay.
Once you select the adjustment brush, you'll get that cursor. And so I'm moving over here, and I'm not being real careful about whether I go over the trees because you see, I don't want to really be meticulous and not, I mean, have to avoid that tree. And so I'm just painting right over it, and you can see the effect now, but once I zoom back out, the effect is going to be negligible.
If you got it in the cloud, in the sky, would it change the color?
It would, yeah. Yeah. And so the Alt key will subtract that. It turns it to a negative. So you can paint back over it and erase it by the negative.
Oh, okay.
See, like if I put it now, it's going to take it off, which I don't really want. So that's kind of neat. You have similar controls in Photoshop.
When you created that color, you were just you first selected the adjustment brush, then you changed the dial, and then you colored over the mountain and just did it again. I'm just wondering where you got the first color before you're doing the map.
Oh, yeah, I colored over that center section of the mountain just so I could see the effect of all the adjustments I was making.
Mm-hmm.
Because without them being applied somewhere, you don't know what's going to happen.
Okay, so right now, after all the adjustments that have changes have been made, now you're just painting over.
Yeah. All right, so that is it. Now let me, I'll turn it off, and we can see the before and after there.
Give some definition.
Yeah, I think that's better. And yeah, if this was a photo I was going to sell, I would do a little better job of it than that. But you can see the effect of it, and you can see that's pretty good to have. So let me get back. If I click close, if you click reset, it's going to undo everything I just now did with that adjustment brush. Everything since the beginning.
At the very beginning, what was that?
Oh, it was one of the slider controls. Yeah, it's right here below the highlights and shadows and so on. It's right here. Clarity and dehaze are together. Well, it is, but in the adjustment brush, it's right below clarity. If you're doing the overall control, it's at the very bottom, right above camera calibration. Yeah. So
Did you move when you click on the adjustment brush, did you click on the dehaze to do anything?
I did. Yeah. See, it's cranked over to 47.
Okay.
Now, what? See, if I've got other of these photos with Lanai in the background and they're looking hazy as well, I don't want to have to do this again and come to this slider and that slider and that slider. So here we go. What if I go where it says custom? I click that and I'll go save current settings as new preset. Well, how about that? So that's another preset. See, we had developed presets and now we got brush presets. But you see, I've already done that there. This is probably a better reason than to number them than what I said before, because here you don't have a choice of where it's going to go.
Yeah.
You can't make a new folder; it's just there. And so if you number them, then you can go right to your presets and find them easier. So, and I've already done that, so I'm not going to save this one, but I've already got one saved.
Oh, so the numbering helps you when you have it up down.
Yeah, right.
Now, okay, tricky thing there, if you go into 10, will it be 1 to 10 or is it
I don't know how they number them.
sorted?
Yeah, well, right. I don't know how they sort them. So let's try it. I'm going to save this and I'll go 10. Theoretically, I will. My fingers hit the right one. AUG. All right. So let's see where it appears. There you go. So it's sorted correctly.
Okay.
That really bugs me, doesn't it? and so now I'm going to delete that. You see the option at the bottom, delete that preset.
Yeah.
Since I've already got a landscape dehaze and I've got an AUG mountain dehaze, which is really the one I just did. I had done this when I was practicing for the presentation. I already saved it.
So
And
when the more smoke on fireworks, where would the dehaze bar go?
let's take a look at that. So I'm going to close this. Clicking close there closes out my adjustment brush. And let me go to Smoky Fireworks. Actually, one thing we can do, I'll show you an Explorer. Show an Explorer. I told you earlier these are human readable. So I'm going to open this in Notepad++, and it takes a few seconds for that to open, but we can tell right from there what the adjustments are. Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, chromatic aberration, and you see there's blacks 2012 and there's blacks. They change the way that setting is applied with Lightroom, whatever the number was in 2012. And so some of your presets you'll see blacks and you'll see blacks 2012. And it's not just that, there's highlights and some of the ones will have 2012. So dehaze. The dehaze isn't here. I didn't use dehaze on that preset.
This is a cute styling sheet that we're looking at.
Well, something, yeah.
Properties.
It's like an XML language is what it is.
Yeah.
How did you get
Back over here, yeah, I said show an Explorer, and then in Explorer, what I did, I right clicked and go edit in Notepad++, which is, you don't have that unless you install it yourself. You could go edit in Notepad, or just if you double click it, it'll say, I don't know how to open this. You can say open it in Notepad, or text edit if you're on Mac. BB edit's better.
How do you like BB edit better?
There's just more control. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show about that. And I'm not going to go into radial filters, but you can save presets on radial filters and graduated filters as well. Different sets of presets for those. And you may or may not have noticed, but where those were located, see you've got oh, stop it. Um, you've got the Adobe folder in your settings, Adobe Lightroom, develop presets. You've got all these develop presets. Well, where are the brush presets? Well, I'll show you. They're under local adjustment presets. They're just all in one folder right there. There's the two that I had saved. So, what if we want to use these same photos on Lightroom Mobile? And by the way, if you don't know about Lightroom Mobile, you don't have to have Lightroom installed on your computer. You don't have to be an Adobe subscriber to download Lightroom Mobile. It's free. Photoshop Fix is free. They're all free. You get more control if you are a subscriber. There's more things you can do with your photos and that sort of thing. But to use the app on your iPad or your Android, it's free. Lightroom and Photoshop on the tablet or phone. I've got the same problem on my iPhone here, the same ones. So, how do the well, the 7-day trial is for the ones you install on your computer, but the ones you get on the tablet, they're free, just literally free. But there's more features if you are an Adobe subscriber. So that's the name of that tune. So here's the way, if I've got it on my iPad or your whatever tablet you've got, you've got to have some way to, number one, get the photos over there and to sync the changes back and forth. And here's how you do that. Here's the thing at the bottom of your module, and we're not in the develop module now. You're not going to see collections if you're in the develop module. But down at the very bottom on the left, below Navigator, below all your folders, is collections. And that's a good way to describe it. What are collections? Well, they are collections of your photos. What's that mean? Well, it's the way that you organize your photos however you want, if you choose to. And they're just copies. If I drag something over to collections and I make a change in my folder, it's going to make the same change in the collection because it's not a different photo. It's the same thing. So I told you earlier that I would tell you, about those twos. I said, well, those are virtual copies. Well, you see all of these right now. I'm in my Adobe User Group, Austin Adobe User Group collection. And you see these other things. Here's Smart Collections. Those are ones that Lightroom put in there for me. And colored purple, well, that's if I click the purple flag. If I'm looking through a bunch of photos, I go purple, purple, purple. That way I can come back to them later. It's just a way to flag them for later action, for me to develop later. Here's one that recently modified. And that's just nothing that I did. It's just photos that are recently modified, that are right there. And the ones we worked with today, they're all there. So those are smart collections. Flag are the ones that I have clicked the flag thing on.
What's the purple flag?
Well, I don't have enough screen real estate to show it here, but it would be, the flagging. And if I want to flag it, I can right click and I can go set flag. It would be the flagged or unflagged, and the color is color label.
Oh, okay.
And that, of course, I said right click, it's control click on a Mac. But on my Mac, I use still a 3-button mouse anyway. So I think the new ones have a right. I mean, if you push into the right, don't they? It's a right click. But it's only one real button. But if you click the left side, it's a left click. If you click the right side, it's a right click.
I kept messing up on that.
Yeah. All right. So collections. You see some of them have this little double pointing arrow, and some of them don't. Like this Cancun book, it doesn't have that. The Cancun 2016, it does. Adobe User Group does. If I hover over it, it says click to stop syncing this with Lightroom Mobile. Wait a minute, that one's synced with Lightroom Mobile? Yeah. So that's how, when I open it on my iPad, how the photos got there, because it syncs. and there's nothing I have to do it. If I work with a photo that is synced, way up here at the top, right now where it says Adobe Lightroom and Bob Matthews, it's going to say syncing 3 photos or syncing 1 photo or however many you've changed or however many you drag into that. If I drag another one into that folder, it'll say syncing 1 or that collection. But all of these ones with the turned up corner of a paper down there that you see on the thumbnails, those are all virtual copies. You see, none of those say 2 because only the copy is in there. And that's why I created a copy, because I wanted to be able to work with them on here. And when I go to the one on my iPad, I want to see the unchanged one there, just for your benefit. Normally, I wouldn't do that. Normally, I would just copy the photos in there, and whatever changes I make on the computer are also reflected. But you see, there are some of them, like this one here, that landscape one we've been playing with, and we used the brush on. That one doesn't have the upturned page, so that one is the original photo. And so when I go to Lightroom on my iPad in just a minute, we're going to see that one has been changed. Okay, so that's how they do there. And when you create a collection, you click the plus, and I can go create a collection. And one of the options is sync with Lightroom Mobile. So you can either check it or uncheck it now, or you can check it or uncheck it later by clicking that little icon to the left of the name. It's at any point you can do that.
The collection has, did you say a copy or did you say an original?
It has the original, but it just is a pointer to the original.
Because one photo can be in multiple collections.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. That's a good way to look at it.
Okay, maybe you have a collection for beaches, another one for Cozumel, another, and so forth. So if you're at the beach in Cozumel, you could have, that one image could be in both of those 2 collections, beaches and Cozumel.
So, does anybody use Gmail?
Oh, yeah.
You know how there's labels in Gmail? You can apply multiple labels to the same email.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly the same thing. So
now when you have one image and you have it in, say, 2 collections, will the same presets be used?
yeah, whatever changes you make to it is,
It's across the board.
Yeah. Okay, so here we are on the iPad. This is my iPad with the same images that you saw earlier, and so there's the one, and you see there's the fishies and the turtle, and there's the beach one. And so let's click on that, and you see some of the same corrections. You've got light, but it looks a little different. So it's just something to get used to. And you notice there's curve adjustments. If you want to adjust with the curve, you can do that.
What does that mean?
It's just a way to fine tune things you adjust. You could, if you use Photoshop and you click on brightness and contrast to change the brightness and contrast, you're going to get sliders, or you can get a curve. You can change the curve on that, and that's a way to click on it and you move it either up and down, left and right, and it takes some practice in getting used to it. And for me, I just prefer the sliders. So you've got all these choices here: effects, clarity. You see, there's dehaze there. And one thing we haven't done is vignette amount. So let me. I'm going to vignette that down like -10. Normally I go -10 on that because I don't want it to be obvious. I want it to be enough vignette so that the corners are darker, and it makes it look better, I think. So you go detail. I don't need to change anything there. All right, so this is basically the same adjustments we had on that photo when it was on the computer. And there's nowhere on Lightroom Mobile where you can save a preset or apply a preset. There's no presets. So here's how you get around that. If you click the 3 dots in the upper right, you go copy settings. So that's the same. We did a copy and paste on the computer, exactly the same thing. So now you get your choices of what to copy, just like we did on the computer. So I go, okay. All right, so now let's go to this one, which is not changed. So you see those sliders are all right in the middle. So that's the original photo. And Lightroom now allows raw. I mean, so this is the raw photo. This is not a JPEG copy of the raw photo. It's raw on an iPad. And there's, if you're on the home screen of Lightroom Mobile, one of the buttons is camera. So you can take raw photos right here with your camera on the iPad or the iPhone. And iPhone 7s and later, and I forget which model of iPad has raw capability. But
If I put Lightroom on my phone, I can take raw photos.
Yep. As long as your phone camera is capable of it. I've got an iPhone 6 and it doesn't take raw. The camera isn't capable of it. But iPhone 7s and later are. Yep. If you got a 7, you can take raw. Even the built-in camera takes raw on a 7. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to click the 3 dots and I'll go paste settings. Boom. And there you go. That's the same settings from the other one. And remember, I remarked that the exposure was a little low, so I'm going to crank that back up. And now that's good. The 3 dots in the upper right, I can copy them, I can paste them. So that I copied them from the other one, from this menu. And now when I got to this one, I pasted them.
Like, did you copy those settings from your laptop?
No. See, this was one of the ones that wasn't the virtual copy. This was the one that we adjusted on the computer. And so when it was synced to my iPad, all the adjustments came over with it.
Oh.
And that vignetting I just now added, when I go back to my computer, it's already synced and that vignetting is there on my computer version of Lightroom. So how cool is that? You can work.
The vignette was supposed to do.
Yeah, let me do a real exaggerated one. Oh, that was under light. Well, I thought it was. That's vignette amount. All right, it's minus 12 right now. I go, boom. That's a vignette. Or this way. See, that a lot of people just go crazy, and you see a lot of photos like that. They go through phases, and that's their vignette phase. I've never had a vignette phase, but I do like. Generally, I put a minus 10 on almost every one of mine. So that's how you do presets on Lightroom Mobile. You can't do true presets, so you copy from one and another. So what if I wanted all of those presets I've got on my computer, I wanted some way to get those easily to Lightroom Mobile? Well, you can't do the presets, so how can we do it? I'll show you real quick. And this is going to have to be real quick. So if you miss something here, you can maybe go to the recording and find it. So what we're going to do is create a collection, and I'm going to create a collection called presets. And I do want to sync as Lightroom Mobile. And I don't want to include selected photos because I've got one selected here, and I don't want that one in my collection. So I'm going to uncheck that. Make new virtual copies. If you want only the copy there, you could, when you click that, it's the virtual copies that are going in there. Okay. Well, I said I would uncheck include selected photos because I don't want that in there. But now I want to first find the photo I do want in there. And so let's go in here and I want to find just a nice generic photo, not fireworks, portrait, maybe this one. This one is not a photo that anybody's going to buy. I mean, that's a snapshot. That's not any photograph you're going to hang behind your couch. But what this one will let us do is it will let us apply different presets to it, which is what I'm wanting. And so that photo is selected. Now I'm going to create a collection and call it presets. I want to include selected photos, and I want to make virtual copies. Sync with Lightroom Mobile. And here's what happens. All right, so now we go to presets, and you see there's one photo in there, and it's got the thing. All right, so the shortcut key, I don't see the option here, but the shortcut key for a virtual copy is the little single tick mark, the quote. What's that called? Apostrophe. Yeah, that's, and I want to reset the settings because that has developed settings on it already. So I want to reset that photo first.
Is it an apostrophe or a backtick?
The apostrophe, the one next to the left of the enter key. Yeah, that is the shortcut for virtual photo. So I'm going to go back up to the original. You can't make a virtual copy of the copy. So I'm going to go back to the grid, and here I'm on the grid, and go portraits, and that got selected. So if I go tick, tick, all right, where is he? Okay, there's my copy.
The dot here is the virtual copy.
Yes, yes. There's create virtual copy. Virtual copy 3. Well, I said my keyboard is not doing the thing, so I'm going to have to do a bunch of these. I'm going to just do 5 virtual copies, and you'll get the whole concept by these 5. All right, so look, and all 5 of those have developed settings. I shouldn't have, develop settings, reset. That's a quick way to do it without having to go to the develop module. And you see there was another mention of 2012 also. Update the current process 2012. So that's what happened in 2012. Bunch of changes. I don't think that's, I think that was before CC. That was before CC came out.
That was, yeah, that's what that was. Creative Cloud and Creative Suite.
Okay, and there's already 2 of these in the collection, so I'm not going to copy those over because nothing would happen. I mean, it wouldn't beep an error at me, but see that little icon right there in the lower right, photo is in collection, so it's already there. All right, so this one I want to go presets, drag those 3 in there, and it shows me only as having 4. When should I should have 5? Oh, I know why, because one of them was in the Adobe User Group collection. So all it said was in collection. You say which one. All right, so now what I want to do is go to the develop module, and we're real quickly going to apply presets to each of these. So I want to go beach, just because, and Bob's Basic. And we're going to go cloudy day, although it's not a cloudy day at all.
Underwater
Yeah. Well, one thing you can tell when we get to the mobile is for sure you know which one is underwater camera.
I want the Throwback Thursday color.
Yeah, sort of like that. All right, so now if I go to grid, does it say, yeah, syncing one photo? I said it was going to say that. See in the upper left, it says syncing one photo. All right, so now it doesn't say syncing anything. So I should be able to go to my iPad, and they should be there.
I think it's like grid.
It's the grid view.
Okay.
All right, so here, if I go back to home screen, all my collections now should be a new collection of presets right there. Boom, there it is. So it's on the home screen. This is the first screen you see when you go to Lightroom Mobile.
What do you want me to see?
Well, it shows all your collections, and so in the lower right, you see the collection presets. That's the one I just created on the computer, and I draw all those copies in there. And so now we want to apply underwater camera to a photo. So I'm going to copy those settings, copy. So they're copies. And now I go back over here. This is a lot of work, but that's the only way. Okay, so this beautiful girl right here with chocolate on her face, I want to paste those settings, and you see there it is. Now you didn't get the pink on there, but it pasted all those settings in there. So the whole purpose of all that, I think it's going to be quick, that part. The whole purpose of putting those 4 photos in there was so you'd have different presets. Here's the bad part about all that. You can't really name them, but here's what you can do. I could have done this on the computer, but I forgot to mention it. What you can do, you can go to the little eye, the little information icon on the right. I can tap that and give it a title. So that is underwater camera. There, done. And so now when I sync that back, well, it is synced. There's nothing I do to sync it. It just happens. I don't think there's a button that says sync now either. It just does. You can tell, yeah, the little cloud, you can see the little 3 dots. It's going left to right. Now it's finished, but there are 3 little indicator dots on that LR and in the cloud to show that it's synchronizing. So now let's go back to the computer. And we should see the title, and that would be in the loop module, L-U-P-E. That's the shortcut E. If I go down the bottom where, oh, come on, where the metadata is, there it is, title, underwater camera, which is what I titled it on the iPad. So that's what I should do with each of these 4, give it the title of the preset I applied to it, so I'll just know. All right, that is Lightroom Mobile. Now the last thing, and we're done, which is good because we're about out of time. At lightroom.adobe.com, there's the online version of Lightroom, lightroom.adobe.com. And you see that collection I just created isn't there, but, comma, if I want it there now, I can reload the page, and it's going to put it there. When the page reloads and it comes, it'll be there. Presets, there it is. So you see a couple of things. You see this photo we did so much with is there, and all the corrections are there. Even our dehazing of the mountain, it's there. The one it needs some cropping and straightening, but that photo is there. And you can edit it. I can click edit this photo, and you see, oh, wait a minute, up in the upper right, look at there, presets. Okay, so hold on, Lightroom breath. You see there are indeed presets here, but they're only the built-in presets. There's no way you can modify those. You can't create your own. You can't import presets into Lightroom Mobile on the browser. What is it? Yeah, I don't know what the real name of it is. Lightroom Cloud, I guess, is a good way to say it. Lightroom Cloud, as opposed to Lightroom Mobile would be on the tablet. All right, they have presets, and I suspect just from the fact that they have presets, that's a feature we can expect in the future. At least I hope, to be able to add your own presets or whatever, modify your own and so on. So you can do that, and just click the X and get out of that, and you see there's our preset folder. There's the one for underwater camera.
Did you say you're going to do the adding the cloud to the file and see which way to the dehaze?
Oh, we did, but yeah, I did it real quick. But I don't mind going back. The fireworks, the cloudy fireworks were added to these two, this one and the one adjacent to it, to its right. But I don't think dehaze is part of that. Let me go to develop and we'll see.
But let's say I took the cloud away, took the smoke away, but now I want it back.
Well, what you'd have to do is go to reset and then back to just the fireworks preset because dehaze, you see, it's still 0. So what I could do, I could go to reset and go, okay, fireworks now. And it takes still some of the smoke out, but not all of it. Okay, well, I hope you got something good out of this. I enjoyed presenting today, and if you do it